Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Katie and this is Katie's Bookish Escape. Today I'm going to be doing my Rereadathon wrap-up of The Great Gatsby, A Heart of Darkness, no, just Heart of Darkness, I always accidentally add an A, and The Tub People, which is a children's picture book. Alright, number one, please forgive my scratchy hoarse voice. I could not speak for almost a week and now it's been a week since then and I still do not have it back to fully functioning, so I sound like a horsey mess. So please forgive me. I apologize. I hate it. And I also go into random coughing fits, so hopefully that doesn't happen. Yeah. Okay, so Rereadathon happened in the beginning of March. It was hosted by Murphy Napier. Napier. Okay, and I'll link her channel down below. So I only picked to reread 3 books in several of the categories. So the categories I chose was a popular book, which Great Gatsby covers, a childhood favorite, which was The Tub People, a game changer, which is also Gatsby because I love this book. And then a book that is underrated or disliked, and I chose Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad because I feel like a lot of people who have to read this hate it. Let's get into Gatsby, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I don't think I said by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I apologize. I shouldn't assume that everyone just knows. So I first read Gatsby in 11th grade in high school, and I really liked it then. And I remember when we were annotating, my teacher had us pay attention to color. So I've always knew how prominent yellow was in this book. And so much so that when I wrote my senior thesis the following year and I was talking about materialism, I pulled a lot of the things that were yellow from Gatsby to prove that, including yellow flappers in their dresses at Gatsby's parties being just for show and very materialistic. Gatsby's car. So I still find that like super interesting, all the yellow and all the different colors. So I'm a little hypersensitive to the colors in the book. I love this. I still love it so much. In fact, I think I loved it more. I did listen to the vast majority of it on audiobook. Just because it was like so fast, and you know, I travel to work for like an hour a day. So it's like I spend that time on audiobook, and it's so easy to find classics on audio for free on Scribd. So yeah, that's what I did for the most of it. Some of it I went back and looked up. See, I still found this story super intriguing, interesting, fun, frustrating, but so good. It's so good. And I wish I knew like really how, I feel like I don't actually know how to give good book reviews now that I have been watching Strip Cover Lit, because those guys like go in so much depth, and I'm like, I feel like my reviews are as shallow as Gatsby's library, and the fact that the pages on the books are not even broken apart yet. Like that reference? I do say one of my favorite things about the book is the eyes of Dr. Eckelberg, yeah. And though I'm like, that's not his eyes, I guess. That's Flapper's eyes. But the eye, you know, but it is the eyes because it's over the crap. I don't know. But the whole, like, the eyes of Dr. Eckelberg, I think really sets the tone very well. I really feel like as the viewer, you are a little bit of Dr. Eckelberg, like watching this whole like monstrosity and mess unfurl in these people's lives. I still hate Tom Buchanan just as much as I ever did. If Tom Buchanan was alive today, he'd be in the GOP and he'd probably have a job in Congress. Yeah, I said it. When I posted that I was rereading this, one of my friends who is a super amazing like literature person, even like an English credentialed teacher, he sent me this article that was posted in like the late 90s about about whether or not Gatsby was black, And I read it and I was like, oh, okay, like I can see some parts of it fitting, but because I hadn't actually like started reading, I was kind of trying to like pay attention to that and see if I agreed. And I will say, like, I could see it, but I also did not find evidence of it, mostly because there were people of color mentioned and they were not described in the same way that Gatsby was. So I think that's like the biggest against that, but I don't know. I still enjoyed like thinking about it and like the parallels of that. And then after we allegedly have like equality for everyone after the civil rights movement, I feel like that, you know, racial integrated marriages and relationships have been like a huge deal. I mean, they've been a huge deal for like all the time, but at least in but specifically in American culture, I think that adds a like certain interesting element of the American dream. So even though like I didn't really find evidence for Gatsby being black, I really appreciated reading that article and like contemplating and thinking about it anyway. Alright, so I re-rated it 5 out of 5 stars, which is what I had already had it rated. Why did I just say had a million times? I love this book. I have a sweatshirt of this cover and I love it. I should have wore it for this video. It's too hot. Oh well. Thing I forgot to mention, I cannot stand how much Gatsby says old sport, and I understand the purpose, and I get that Fitzgerald's like beating himself over the head with that. Like, he's trying to be like old money. He's trying to be like old money, and he's calling him old sport, but I was just like, shut up. It was like way more prominent when you listen to it on an audiobook than when you're reading it. Like, I found it annoying when I read it, but like, oh my god, when you're listening to it, it's awful. Alright, now let's get into Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. This is a, I don't know, Signet Classics. Signet? I don't know. So, like, only half of this is actually Heart of Darkness. It's very short. And the other story is The Secret Share, which I've never read, and honestly, I don't really have the desire to read it. So, I read Heart of Darkness in high school, and I read it again in college, and I remember liking it a lot more than, like, everyone else. And so I really wanted to do it for Rereadathon. And I remember liking the analyzing. I liked going to class and I liked talking about it. I liked writing essays about it. I liked the discussions that came from it. And I found that exact same thing this time. But oh my god, trying to read it for enjoyment, it's not enjoyable. I mean, granted, the whole point of the book is like the darkness. So yeah, falling into darkness isn't supposed to necessarily be enjoyable. But it's a little bit painful. Like, yeah, I would never read this again for pleasure. However, after I read it and I'm like, oh man, why is it so like it's just not enjoyable to read, but like, why don't people have the same values as I do? Like, where I still value the conversations that came from it. So I was going on Goodreads and I was looking at a bunch of negative reviews and I was like, okay, like, I get it, but reading all the comments and, like, thinking about my own arguments against theirs and the things I actually did enjoy versus what they didn't enjoy and the meaning of certain things and the analyzing of this book, I still just really love analyzing and talking to people about it. Even if they hate it, even if they hate this story, I still enjoy the analyzing and discussion. I will say I do feel like that Conrad is a very poetic writer, and so in that sense you really need to experience and like kind of just dive in it and get over the fact that it is not following like a typical like plot device driven story. That is not a grammatically correct sentence, I apologize, but you have to like embrace the stream of consciousness and just kind of like be in it. And that's one thing I did really like about it. And sometimes there was a quote or two that I was like, wow, like I dig that. So much so I actually marked it. So I'm going to read that out loud. The earth seemed unearthly. We are accustomed to look upon the shackled form of a conquered monster. But there you could look at the thing monstrous and free. It was unearthly, and the men were. No, they were not inhuman. Well, you know, that was the worst of it. This suspicion of their not being inhuman. It would come slowly to one. They howled and leaped and spun and made horrid faces. But what thrilled you was just the thought of their humanity. Like yours, the thought of your remote kinship with this wild and passionate uproar. Ugly, yes, it was ugly enough. But if you were man enough, you would admit to yourself that there was in you just the faintest trace of a response to the terrible frankness of that noise, a dim suspicion of there being a meaning in which you so remote from the night of first ages, could comprehend. And why not? The mind of man is capable of anything, because everything is in it, all the past as well as all the future. What was there after all? Joy, fear, sorrow, devotion, valor, rage, who can tell? But truth stripped of its cloak of time. Let the fool gape and shudder, the man knows and can look on without a wink. But he must at least be as much of a man as these on the shore. He must meet the truth with his own true stuff, with his own inborn strength. Principles won't do. Acquisitions, clothes, pretty rags that would fly off at the first good shake. No, you want a deliberate belief. An appeal to me in this fringe row, is there? Very well. I admit, I have a voice too, and for good or evil, mine is the speech that cannot be silenced. Alright, then it kind of like drifts off and more of the stream of consciousness. But I really love that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Marlowe was like not racist. But I think that line really shows how people in Europe at the time were bred and raised to be civilized and look down on people, and this is really the imperialism really bred into racism. And I like that. So there's a little glimpse of like, oh, they're not that different, like if you really look like into yourself. And I'm not saying it's an I'm not being an apologist for racism at all. I'm just saying I enjoy the character's reflection in that way, and the way he worded it. Some of the negatives, not only is the story kind of confusing, unenjoyable, but it can be like really repetitive at times. But yeah. Also, obviously, the best quote in my opinion is the horror, the horror. And if you ever read it, you'll know exactly when that hits. You probably heard that phrase before, and yeah, it really symbolizes the book perfectly. I also do appreciate the historical relevance of this book and that it has to do with imperialism and the questions that are brought up because of this book. I love that. Alright, then the last book I read was The Tub People by Pam Conrad. And this was one of my favorite books ever growing up, and when I was a really little kid. And I reread it, and I remembered it very well. And I still just love it so much. Once my voice is totally back, I will do a, like, read aloud, so parents can, like, you know, instead of having to read to their kid themselves, can play that video. But not until my voice is better. So I still rate this 5 out of 5 stars. It actually was written the year I was born, so 1989. And this was the 10th anniversary, so this is from 1999. And I just love the artwork. I mean, the little boy and his doggy. I love it. I love it so much. So still a 5 out of 5 star book. Alright, so that has been my wrap up for Rereadathon. Thanks for watching. Feel free to post your opinions in the comments below. Tell me if I did a crappy job reviewing or whatever. And also, if you want to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.